Hello, in this video, I'm going to talk about the purpose statement. This is the purpose statement that you would include in your introduction for a research proposal or for your final manuscript after you've conducted a study. So the purpose statement establishes the intent of the entire study. The purpose statement is really important and really provides direction for the study that you are going to conduct and direction for the reader when they're reading your proposal or your final manuscript, so that they understand what the point was of your study. It's the most important statement in the entire study. In an article, so like if you are writing up your manuscript to submit for publication, it would be the final statement in the introduction. And if you're writing your thesis or your dissertation, then your purpose statement is usually a standalone section after the introduction. So the significance and why do we need a purpose statement? So the purpose statement indicates why you want to do the study. It also indicates what you intend to accomplish by doing this study. Okay, so that's really important. Why do you want to do the study and what do you plan to accomplish? It's the central controlling idea in the study. So it really should guide your methodology and how you're going to conduct this study and why and what you plan to find in this study. So it's written in a sentence or several sentences, depending on the study. So in some cases, you might be able to sum it up in just one sentence, but sometimes you might need really a whole paragraph to make sure that you are hitting all of the important points that you need to include for your purpose statement. It sets the objectives, the intent, or the major idea of a proposal or a study. Now, what the purpose statement is not, it's not the problem leading to the need for the study. So you do discuss that throughout the introduction, but when you get to the purpose statement is not telling us what the problem was that leads to the need for the study. It's also not the questions to be answered by collecting the data. So the purpose statement is not your research question. It's not your hypothesis. This is different. So in a qualitative purpose statement, it's going to contain the central phenomenon. So whatever is happening that you intend to study, the participants that you intend to work with, and the research site that you intend to work with, where you're going to recruit your participants, or maybe it's a work site and you're going to recruit participants who work at that work site, or whatever it might be. So you're going to focus on a single phenomenon and to narrow down your study to one idea. You're going to give us a working definition of that phenomenon. Okay, so the phenomenon might be very familiar to you. That's why you're studying it. So you might have done your literature review. You might be very familiar with this phenomenon, but the reader, you have to assume, doesn't know about this phenomenon. So you need to narrow it down very specifically and give a working definition of what that phenomenon is that you intend to study. And that needs to be right there in your purpose statement. You're also going to delimit the scope of participation or research sites. So that's where you're telling the reader, here are the participants and the basic characteristics of these participants and where the research is taking place. You're going to use words like purpose, intent, or objective to signal attention to this statement as the central controlling idea. So we should be able to scan the introduction of a study or of a research proposal, and we should be able to easily identify the purpose statement, because it should say something like the purpose of this study is to, or the intent of this research, or whatever. So we should be able to clearly identify it because of these signaling words that should be included in the purpose statement. You can also use action verbs like describe, understand, develop, or explore. So there's all sorts of different verbs like that that we can include. So it would be like the purpose of this study is to understand blah, blah, blah phenomenon, which we define as, just as an example. It includes words that indicate the strategy of inquiry. So how are you going to investigate this problem? So here is kind of a rough template for how you can start to write your purpose statement for a qualitative study. And again, this is just a loose template. You might have more that you want to include. You might have less. You might have a different way that you want to state it, but this is kind of a good way to start. So you could say something like the purpose of this, fill in the blank. So it could be the strategy of the inquiry, like ethnography, case study, or whatever. So you could say like the purpose of this case study is, now is if the study hasn't happened yet. So like for a proposal, you would say the purpose is. Now, if you already conducted the study and now you're writing your manuscript after the fact, then it would be the study was, because it happened already in the past tense. Okay, so the study was or is to, what are you trying to do? Understand, blah, 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 explore, develop, discover what is the central phenomenon? So you're trying to understand the phenomenon. So you're going to state what that phenomenon is and here are the people we're studying. So who are the participants that you're trying to understand that phenomenon for? So the participants, such as the individual, groups, organization, at whatever is the research site. So maybe you want to understand the study behaviors of students at Concordia University, just as an example. At this stage in the research, the central phenomenon, whatever it is, maybe study habits or whatever it is, will be generally defined as, and then give that definition. So again, this is just a loose kind of template to work with and build on it or change it around to meet whatever the needs are of the study that you are trying to write about. Okay, quantitative purpose statement is a little bit different in terms of language and focus. So a big difference is in quantitative research, we really have to give a lot of attention and focus to the variables that we're studying in quantitative research. So your purpose statement needs to include the variables that you are examining in your study and their relationship to one another. So you'll use the literature to help you define the key variables, identify the variables that are the independent and dependent variables, and you discuss the independent ones first and then the dependent ones second. Identify any mediating, moderating, or control variables, and then use words to connect the variables, like talk about the relationship between this variable and that variable, or a comparison of this list of variables, or whatever it might be. So you'll discuss the different variables, you'll include them, you'll define them if you need to, and use words that connect those variables in terms of your purpose for conducting this study. You're also going to include information about who are the participants and what is the research site or sites if you're using more than one. So just like with qualitative, you'll use specific words to signal the intent of the study. So again, like purpose, intent, objective. And you might identify a theory or model or conceptual framework that you are using to guide your study. So maybe you're using social cognitive theory, or who knows what, like maybe there's a theory of behavior or whatever theory it is, depends on what it is that you're studying, that you are using as a framework for how you are designing your study, and kind of the filter through which you are sort of viewing the purpose of this study and how you're going to proceed from here. So if you are working within a conceptual framework, then you're going to want to mention that and discuss that a little bit there, maybe define it if you need to. You can also mention the specific strategy of inquiry. So is it a survey study? Is it a double-blind controlled study? What is it? So tell us how you are designing your study. So here again is just kind of a rough template to help get you started. You might need more, you might need less, depending on what it is that you need to say. So the purpose of this, what is it? What kind of study is it? Is it a survey? Is it, who knows what? So the purpose of this blank study is, if it's a proposal and hasn't happened yet, was, if you already conducted the study, to test the theory of blank that blank. So if you're testing a theory, then that's where you would put that. And so let's see, that something compares or relates the independent variable to the dependent variable. And of course, you're not going to say independent and dependent. You're going to put in what those variables are, controlling for, and then list any mediating or moderating variables that you're going to control for in your study. For participants, whoever those are, and so describe what those participants are like, or what the delimiting factors are, the delimitations for those participants at whatever is the research site. And then the independent variables blank will be defined as, and you give a definition. The dependent variables will be defined as, give a definition. And the control and intervening variables blank. So then you're going to identify your intervening variables will be defined as, and give your definition. Okay, so you may not have intervening variables, or like this may not all apply to you in your study. So get rid of those if it doesn't apply, or there might be more than this that you need to include. So include what you need, but this is just kind of to give you an idea of what that purpose statement could look like. All right, for a mixed methods purpose statement, it should contain the overall intent of the study from a content perspective. And as with the other two types, begin with words that signal intent, so like purpose, study aim, intent of, objective, those sorts of words. And then you're going to want to include the information about both the quantitative and qualitative components. So you're going to include a lot of what we just discussed for qualitative and quantitative purpose statements. You'll need to include really all of that information for both. So the information about participants and the research site, but then you're also going to need to include the qualitative aspects and the quantitative aspects, like the variables and so on, and indicate the type of methodology that you intend to use. So indicate what are the qualitative components, what are the quantitative components, and give a rationale for why both are important for the purpose of your study. All right, that is all I have in this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.